Okay, good morning, everybody. As we go to the Parsha of the week, we are in the portion of Mishpatim, which is the laws of the Torah, and fascinating laws that are given in Torah law. We are holding chapter 22, verse number 4. Ki yivai ish sadeh. If a man leads his animal into a field or a vineyard, and he lets his animal loose, and by letting the animal loose, the animal eats another person's field, meitav sadeu or meitav kaim yishalem, then he has to pay from the best of his vineyards, for the best of his field, and for the best of his vineyards, he must pay. These are the terms: donate an animal, to send my cow to eat in somebody else's field. Kivar means he leads his animal into his neighbor's field or vineyard, and it damages the property of one of these two ways, either by sending his animal or by eating it. Because the animal doesn't have to eat; it can kick around everything in the field too. Our sage explained Vishilach refers to the damage is made by treading on the foot. Uvi'er is the damage is made by the tooth. So that's the two expressions, Shen V'regel, in the Gemara. The animal destruction by the animal's teeth, by eating, and the animal's destruction by his feet. One means another field. It means in a field of some, not into a public field. It doesn't belong to anybody, but you send your animal, you let your animal go to somebody else's field. So what means the best of his fields? The judge assesses the damage. And if the owner of the animal comes to pay the owner of the land the amount of his damage with land, he has no money, he must pay in the best of his field. If his damage is worth a selah, he must give him the value of the selah from the best of the land that he has. He cannot send him to his garbage land and say, you know what, take from my dump yard, take my swamp land, take from there as much as you want, the value of what I damaged. No, you go to the best field. And this teaches us that when it comes to damages, you always take from the best of the damages possession. Verse number 5. If a fire goes out and forth and finds thorns, Menechel Gadush and a stack of grain, Oikama or standing grain, Oisada or any kind of fields, Shalim Yishalim, the one who ignited the fire shall pay. Amar v'sabeira, the one who started the fire has to pay for his damages. If a fire goes out, Rashi says this teaches us even by itself. And as the Rashi says, it's all brought down in Baba Kama. Umatza koitzim is meaning thistles. V'nechol gadish, that is, the fire caught into the thorns until it reached a stack of grain or standing grain still attached to the ground. Oishada, or the fire scorched a furrow that has been plowed, and he had to plow it a second time. Shtalim Yishalim, one who ignited it shall surely pay. Although he ignited it within his own property, and it spread by itself through the thorns that is found, he is obligated to pay because he did not guard his burning coals, so it would not go forth and inflict damages. Verse number 6. It's another fascinating law, the law of a safekeeper, the law of a watchman. There are different kinds of watchmen in the Torah. A non-paid watchman, a paid watchman, a renter, a borrower. So if a man gives his neighbor money or article of safekeeping, and it was stolen from the house of the watchman. If the thief is found, Yishalim Shnayim, he has to pay double. So Rashi's Vaguna Mevesa, it was stolen from the house, according to what he said. The guy says, "What you think? I know it was. I gave me to watch, and then it was stolen." Im Yematzai Ganav, the thief shall pay twofold. So original meaning we were talking about that we find that he himself stole it. That the watchman stole it, he has to pay double. If the watchman, we didn't find the ganav, the stealer was not found, then the homeowner shall approach the judges. The watchman has to come forward and he has to make a vow that he did not touch the animal or the product, whatever the safeguarding thing was, he did not touch it. Shvuas Hashomrim. This is the shvua, the vow of a watchman. If Rashi says, and this custodian, who's the owner of the house, comes forward, they'll come to the court. He did not touch because it was a watchman. A watchman is not allowed to touch. He's not a renter. He's not a borrower. A watchman is not allowed to touch anything that was given to watch. If he touched it, even if it was stolen from him, he has to pay. So a non-paid watchman is no obligation if the thing was stolen from him. He only has an obligation if he was negligent. Torah continues, a cold bar pesha, on any sinful word, whether it's on an ox or a donkey, whether it's on a lamb, salma, or it's on a lost article. I'm sorry, it's on a garment. On any lost article. And he says, this is what it is. They're going to bring it to court. Both of them will come to court. You'll soon see what Ashi explains this. The way the court, see again over here, Lakim is the court. We'll have to pay double. What are we talking over here about? We're talking again about a watchman or about somebody who found something. And now he says, I don't have it, or I only have a certain amount of it. The guy says, I lost my wallet. Here's back your wallet. The guy opens the wallet, only $50 in it. And he said there was $100 in it. So now he says, I only have 50. So now he had later the Chachamim, so I don't want to bring up this one, but the argument in the Gemara, if a guy who finds something, he has to make a vow. But surely if a guy comes to a person and says, I've given you an object, and you say I gave you $100 to watch, and now you say you only gave me 50, that's called a moida b'mitzas. And I have to make a vow. If you find me to be a liar, after my vow, now I have to pay double. So that's what the Rashi says. For any sinful word that he's found lying in his oath, when you have to make an oath, like a watchman who says, I never touched the object. And later we find witnesses who say he did touch the object. Or the guy said it was stolen, and later we find witnesses that he has actually the object. Now he has to pay double. First for his geneva, and then vowing that he has not that for stealing, and number two is he vowed that it was stolen by somebody else. So that's the point. This is the law of the Torah. If he's found to be lying on his oath, for witness testify that he himself stole it, and the judges declare him guilty because the testimony of the witnesses, now he pays double. So that he shall pay double to the neighbor. The text teaches us that if one puts forth a claim concerning an item entrusted to him, saying that it was stolen from him, and I'm not responsible, and it was discovered that he himself stole it, he must make a twofold restitution. When is this so? Only if he swore that he did not take it, and afterwards witnesses came and testified that he had taken it. For so have the rabbis of blessed memory interpreted, and the whole moment approaches the judges. This approaching means he makes an oath that the custodian swore that the article was stolen. You say that he approached for an oath, or perhaps it means he approached only for a litigation. In this case, if he comes to litigate and he denies any responsibility by saying that the object was stolen, then he immediately liable. Then he immediately stolen. Then he is immediately liable for tubzo restitution. If witnesses come and testify that he has the possession, the answer is that since the expression laying in his hand is mentioned here in verse 7, and below laying in his hands is mentioned the oath, the Lord shall be between the two of them, provide that he did not lay his hands upon the native property. So we have the oath in verse number 10. Just as the laying in the hand written further denotes an oath, so too lay of the hand here means denotes an oath. So it means simply, Rashi says, that a guy comes forward, and Yankel gives Shmerel $100 to watch, or a watch to watch, and he comes back later. He says, "I need my watch back." The guy says, "I'm sorry, but it was stolen." And an unpaid watchman is not responsible for stolen objects. So the guy says, "Okay, what should I do? It was stolen, but I'm going to bring you to court. And in front of court, you're going to have to make a vow that you did not touch the object. You had no negligence now. You didn't put the object outside. You didn't use the object." So the watchman says, "Okay, no problem. I'll make a vow." He makes the vow. And then a couple of days later, the witnesses come and say, "My friends, the watch is still in his house." So now we know that he's lying. He lied. He lied that the thing was stolen. And not only lied the thing, he made a vow. So now he pays double. If the guy comes forward and says, "Listen, I want you to make a vow," and the guy says, "Oh, I don't want to make a vow," and they keep on going, and they says, "Oops, I have it. I'm sorry. I forgot. It's in the other closet here." Then he doesn't have to pay double. So then Rashi says the next shot, according to the simple meaning of the verse, concerning which witnesses will say, "This is it. The article about which you swore was stolen, but really it's in your possession." The pleas of both parties must be brought to the judges, as the judge will interrogate the witnesses. And the witnesses, are acceptable, and the judges declare the custodian guilty. He must pay twofold to the owner. If he declares the witnesses guilty, namely they were found conclusive, they must pay twofold to the custodian. That's the other law. If we find the witnesses to be liars, our rabbis of blessed men are very TQ is there. It means that the judges do not demand an oath of him, so unless he admits part. That's a moedim b'mixas. That's the classical moedim b'mixas. Moedim b'mixas is when a guy says, I lent you $100, and the other guy says, Yankel tells Shmerel, I lent you $100, and Shmerel says that it was only $50. That's a moedim. I agreed to half of it. Ki hu zeh. It's only this. So that's a moedim b'mixas, a person who agrees to pay half. This is the meaning. The judges do not demand an oath of him, because unless he admits to part of the claim against him, saying, I owe you so much, but the rest was stolen from me. And this is a whole argument in the Gemara. And as I said, you should all learn Baba Kama. Verse number 9. If a man gives his neighbor a donkey, a bull, a lamb, or any animal for safekeeping, but mace, and it dies, a nishbar, or breaks a limb, a nishba, or it's captured, ain roya, and no one is seen. So Rashi says The first section was stated concerning unpaid custodian. Therefore, the Torah exempts him from theft, as written, stolen from a man's house. If the thief was not found, the owner approaches the judge and he makes an oath. Thus, we learn that he's exempt himself. That he exempts himself with an oath. This section, however, is stated concerning a paid custodian. A paid custodian means I gave you an object to watch for me, and I'm paying you to watch it for me. That's a whole different law. Therefore, he's not exempt if the deposit was stolen. So if somebody gives somebody something to watch and he pays him, not important how much he pays him, now he cannot exempt himself from that the thing was stolen. But in the case of an accident beyond his control, that's what the verse over here says, Mace died. Or capting means that somebody came and did armed robbery. It was not just stolen in the middle of the night. Somebody came to my house, came with a gun and did an armed robbery I couldn't control, I couldn't protect it. So that, or broke a limb, it broke in my house. Or it was forcibly captured by bandits. And no one was there to see it and to testify concerning the matter. Right? If there's witnesses, not a problem. Problem is the word of the custodian. The custodian says, I'm sorry, my friend, armed robbers came into my house, they robbed my whole house and your object. Or if you gave me your dog to watch, the dog died in my house. Thank you for paying me for watching your dog, but your dog died. What do you do in a paid custodian? Paid custodian, the law is he's in that situation, natural death. How do we know that you didn't kill him? We don't know. Therefore, Shvuas Hashem Tir B'im Shneim, he has to make a vow. Again, that he was not negligent. He has to make a vow that he was not negligent. And the neighbor takes the broken property, the dead animal, and now the custodian, the paid custodian, doesn't have to pay. So Rashi says, Shvuas Hashem Tir, he has to make a vow that so happened. He did not lay his hand upon the object because he laid upon it and afterwards something beyond his control happened. So if you were negligent, you use the object. Now, even if you're a paid custodian, you become responsible. The Baal takes the vow, and the custodian does not have to pay him. But if it was stolen from him, Shalom Baal of a paid custodian must repay the owner. In Tarif, if it was torn apart, Yaviya aid, Hatreifa, he shall bring witness for it, for the torn one shall not pay. In Tarif de Chayara, same thing like a bandamina, a lion came in and killed your animal. I can't control that. Yavi aid, he has to bring witnesses to testify that if the animal was torn apart in the way it was beyond his control, and he is exempt even from making a vow. The Torah does not say for a torn one shall not pay, but for the torn one. For one type of torn animal, he does pay. And for another type of torn animal, he does not pay. For an animal torn apart by a cat or a fox or a marten, he must pay. But an animal torn apart by a wolf, by a lion or a bear or a snake, he does not have to pay. So what it means out of my control is not that my cat killed your animal. That you could have controlled, or even your dog killed your animal. That you could have controlled. Or you didn't control to protect my animal from your cat or your dog. But if it was torn apart by a lion, how can I control that? A lion came into the property and killed your animal. A wolf came into there, a snake came in. I can't control that. And therefore, I'm not obligated to protect it from such situations, even a paid custodian. So, as it continues, the proof is that it's written and it dies, breaks a limb when it's captured. Just as with death, he can't save it, so too with the breaking a limb in captivity, that he could not save it. But in the case of less ferocious beasts, like a fox, since the shepherd could save in his charge, he is liable. So, like a shepherd is a paid custodian in essence. Now the Torah tells us the law of a shoel, a borrower, somebody who borrows something. If a man borrows something from his friend, he's not paying for it, he's borrowing it. Let me borrow your animal. Let me borrow your car. Let me borrow your utensils. Whatever it might be, I'm borrowing it. And if it dies, so the worst is to be a borrower, the most harsh is to be a borrower. The borrower is always responsible for stealing, for death. When I borrow something, I'm always responsible. I have full responsibility. So that says this comes to teach us that concerning a borrower, that he's liable for accidents beyond his control. That's it. Once I become a borrower, I borrowed your horse, and now I say a lion came and ate it. Okay, that's your responsibility. Unless one thing, and that is if the owner was there. If the owner of the bull is not with the borrower doing his work, if the owner was there, that means they borrowed it together, so to say, to work together. Now he's not responsible if an accident happened. Im balav imay. If the owner is with him, lo yishalem, he does not have to pay. Im sacharu, and if he's a hired animal, so now we have the fourth kind of person. We had a non-paid watchman, a paid watchman, a borrower. Now we have the Torah mentions the law of a renter. And this is a whole argument in the Gemara, because it's not clear exactly what a renter is. A renter is not that the person is paying him to watch it, but I'm actually paying to use your object. What is the law of a renter? It's not very clear. It's a whole argument. So now it says, in balavina, whether the animal's owner, was with him, the bar doing the same work, or he's with him doing a different work, if he, the animal's owner, was with him, the borrower at the time of the loan, he, the owner, need not to be with him at the time of the limb was broken, or the animal died, to make him exempt from paying. The Gemara says that the owner was with him in any other time with this animal, or with this object while he was using it, then he is exempt. Oh, now we come, suddenly Torah throws in the word of a renter. If the bull, Rashi says, was not borrowed, but hired, and it came to be hired in the hands of the hirer for a fee, not through the lending, and he hired the hirer, does not have complete benefit of the animal, for he used it through its hire. He does not have the status of a borrower to be liable for accidents beyond his control. The Torah ever does not specify what is status. What is the status of a renter? It's not, therefore, the sages of Israel differ concerning him. What is a renter? How does the hire pay in a case of an accident? Rameh says like an unpaid custodian. Rabbi Yehuda says like a paid custodian. The main machlekes in the Gemara is a renter like a person who took something, an unpaid custodian. Therefore, he's the most least responsible. Because really, why is the most least responsible? Because the guy's getting his money. He got money for giving me the object. Or do we say he is like a paid custodian, and the law will be different if he's responsible if the thing is stolen. So a non-paid custodian is not responsible even if something was stolen. A paid custodian is responsible for something that is stolen. He's not responsible if an unforeseen situation happened. And that's the 4 watchmen in the Torah: non-paid watchman, a paid watchman, a borrower, and somebody who rents a sachar. Verse 15. Ki yefate ish besula. If a man seduces a non-married woman, asher lo yarasha, which he did not betroth, he's not betrothed to her, v'shachav ima, and he sleeps with her, ma yimarena lo liisha. So God says this is a powerful law. God in essence, the Torah in essence says, if a person seduces a non-married woman, he has to marry her. If she wants to be married, he has to marry her. I think that will control sex out of before marriage by all teenagers. If you tell them that if you have a relationship, physical relation, you have to get married to that person. No choice if that person wants to marry you. So that says the man seduces means he speaks to her heart until she yields to him. And so Aramaic, it's the yefate is yishtadel, equivalent to pitui in Hebrew. Ma yemerena, he shall stipulate for her a dowry, as a custom for a man to his wife, that he writes to her a ksuba. He has to marry her. Basically, he shall marry her. If she wants to get married, he has to marry her. If the father refuses to give her to him, we're talking about a young girl, he shall weigh out money according to the dowry of virgins, which is a fixed 50 silver shekel in the case of one whose size is of a virgin and forcibly lies with her. As stated, a man shall give her, the maiden and father, 50 shekel. So that's if she doesn't want to get married. She doesn't want to get married to him. She's 12. She's under 12. So her father says, I don't want her to marry her to him. She's underage. Then there's a monetary punishment. So the monetary the court might put even a bigger monetary punishment. But over here, the basic monetary punishment is 50 silver coins. But if the girl wants to get married, he has to marry her. And this law is he has to marry her and he cannot divorce her. Shefa, verse number 18, Machashefa, loy sechaya, a sorcerer, you're not allowed to let live. Now she says, but she would, Machashefa is feminine. This is you could have a Machashefa in the masculine too, but it was usually that kind of sorcerers were women. But she shall be executed by the court. This applies equal to both male and female. But the text speaks of the usual, and those who practice sorcery were usually women. The Gemara in Sanhedrin. Kol sheikha v'mehema, whoever lays with an animal, bestiality, most yumas shall be put to death. Now she says, V'skila, this is talking about stoning, the male who has carnal relationship with an animal is just as liable as the female who's carnal relationship with an animal. No difference really. Even over here it's talking about masculine, but it doesn't make a difference if a man has a relationship with an animal, a woman has a relationship with an animal. Either one is punishable in Torah by death. Verse 19. He who slaughters a sacrifice to God shall be destroyed. Iltil Hashem Lavada, you're not allowed to bring a sacrifice but to God. Rashi says, to God is to pagan deities. Rashi proves that Lelakim to pagan because it's very, Lelakim, the Lelakim was you sacrifice to God, so that you should sacrifice to God. So Rashi says, Lelakim brings on many places that Lelakim could be translated also. Also like Gelakim. Gelakim in the pasuk could be translated in many different ways. It could be the court, it could be God, it could be other deities. And Yechram Rashi also proves over here that she shall be put to death. Now, why does it say shall be destroyed? Is the death penalty not mentioned elsewhere? And you shall take a man or a woman and you shall stone them so they will die. So why is over here it says Yechram, to be destroyed? Since the Torah did not specify which type of worship is liable to death, so you can say that for all types of worship, one is liable to death. Torah comes and specifies to you here. He was slaughtered, a sacrifice to God shall be destroyed. To inform us that just as slaughtering is a type of worship performed inside the temple of God, I also include one who burns incense as a part of an animal, or performs libation, which is a type of worship performed inside the temple. And people are liable by performing them to idolatry whenever or when or not it's customary to worship that particular deity in that manner. Meaning that there are two ways to do idol worship. One is by doing the service that is usually for that deity, whatever that service might be. Number two is if you do the service that you usually do for God, you do the service for that deity, even though it's not the service of that deity, but it's the service that is done in the Beis Hamikdash for the Eibishter. That's called worshiping Avodah Zarah. That's called worshiping idols. So therefore, however, the types of worship, for example, however, other types of worship, example, sweeping, sprinkling water on the sand before the floor to idols, embracing, kissing it, is not liable for death. Because it's not the way to worship, not the way the thing is worshipped itself, and it's not the way you worship the Eibush by kissing and hugging and doing all these things in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, if you did this to an idol, you're not punishable by death, but you are punishable, but you are warned. You get an azara, and we'll learn another time that is the concept of 39 lashes. Verse 20. You shall not mistreat a stranger. You should not oppress him. Because you were a stranger in the land of Egypt. Now she says you're not allowed to mistreat a stranger by taunting him with words. And that's the concept. By robbing his money. You can't say I'm going to rob a stranger. He gave him. He said, if you taunt him, he can also taunt you by saying you were. So don't taunt people that are immigrants, so to say, because we are all immigrants. We were all, even the Jewish nation was immigrants. So that's what the Gemara says, do not reproach your neighbor with faults that is also yours. Every expression of a stranger ger means a person who is not born in that country, but has come from another country to live there. So therefore, treat your immigrants nicely, because the Jewish nations were immigrants in many other nations. We were immigrants in the land of Egypt. Verse 21, Kalamana v'yasam leisenu, you shall not oppress a widower or an orphan. Asher, this applies to all people. Well, I don't oppress a widow or an orphan, but I can oppress a regular person. But the Torah speaks of a usual situation. They're vulnerable. A widow and an orphan are vulnerable. So since widow and orphans are weak, and they're easily to suppress them, they're easily to hurt them, therefore the Torah tells us, be careful the way you treat an orphan and a widow. In Tanya, if you oppress a widow, you take advantage of her weakness. They'll cry out to me, this widow will cry out to me, Shamaya Eshma Takasa, I will hear his cry. Now she says the verse doesn't say exactly what that means. It threatens punishment, but does not delineate this punishment. This is similar to whoever kills Cain. It threatens, but does not delineate his punishment. What happens? Here too, if you oppress him, is an expression of a threat. If you oppress him, the orphan or the widower, you will ultimately receive what is coming to you. Why? Because he will cry out to me. So whatever the punishment will be, David says, trust me, I will punish you. My wrath will kindle. I will slay you with the sword. And your wives will become orphans. Your wives will become widows. and your children will become orphans. Rashi said from the vacation, it said, "I will slay you." So don't you know your wives will become orphans, and your children become widows, and your children become wives? Why did the Torah have to tell us that? Rather, this is another curse, namely that the wives will be banned in a living widowerhood. There will be no witnesses to the husband's death, and thus they will be forbidden to come married. That's aguna. Not only your wife, she'll be a laguna, meaning she'll be a widower who's not really a widower. She doesn't have a husband, but she doesn't know where her husband is. She can't remarry. And the children are orphans, but they're not really orphans. So they cannot use the property because the father might be alive. So the children will be orphans because the court will not allow them to have their father's property, since they did not know whether he died or he's captured. They don't know. So that's what the Torah means. Verse 24. In Kesatal Vasami, if you lend money to my people, Esa'ani imach, the poor man person with you, Loitia lekenesha, don't behave towards him like a lender. Loisasim of neshach, don't impose interest upon him. Rashi says, very powerful law over here. Rashi says, Rabbi Shmuel said, every im in the Torah, if, when, every im in the Torah is optional except three. And this is one of them. That you're not im if you, it's not if, it's when. You're obligated to loan money to a person that is destitute. As Ami, with a member of my people, means the Jewish people, and a Gentile apply for a loan, the member of my people take preference. The poor people, you have to support poor people of the Jewish nation and non-Jewish nation, but a Jewish poor person comes first. If a poor person and a rich person apply for a loan, the poor person takes preference. If a poor of your city and the poor of another city apply for a loan, the poor of your city take preference. And this is the meaning. When you lend your money, lend to my people and not to a Gentile, if you don't have enough for the Jew and the Gentile, and which is my people, to a poor person, and which is a poor person, to the one who's with you. Meaning, if you have enough money to lend to only one person, lend it to a Jew rather than a non-Jew. Even if the Gentile will pay interest, and you are not allowed to take interest from the Jew, you must lend it first to the Jew, because he's part of your nation. Another meaning, my people, that you shall not behave towards him, the borrower, in a demeaning manner when lending to him, for he's a member of my people. Treat him nicely. Don't treat him derogatory. He's lending money, he needs money. He's borrowing money, he needs money. So lend it to him with respect. Give him his dignity. How do you do that? As ani imcha. You have to make the poor man that he feel like, you have to make the poor man like you. Meaning, as she says, he mistaka ba'atzmecha. Imagine you're the poor man. Look at yourself as the poor man. What would you do if you were the one who was asking for the money? Would you want to be treated respectfully? You would. So now imagine I'm the poor man, and now but it's not like that. The poor man's asking me for money, he's asking me for a loan. Treat him right. Leitia kenesha. You shall not demand it forcibly. If you know that he does not have the money to pay you, do not appear to him as if you have lent to him, but as if you're not lent to him. Do not embarrass him. Don't make the person feel uncomfortable when he passes you in the street. Oh, you owe me money. And for surely don't take interest. Neshech. Biting. Neshech. Interest is called biting, which is biting of a snake, which bites by making a small wound in the person's foot. And then the person does not feel the wound. And suddenly it spreads and swells up as far as a crown, his crown. So too is interest. He does not feel it and is not noticeable until the interest accumulates and it costs him considerable sum of money. So taking interest on your loan is like a bite of a snake. He doesn't feel it, he needs the money. And it's only a small percent. But ultimately, this percent accumulates, and now he owes you more than he borrowed from you. And therefore, the Torah prohibits a person taking interest from another Jew. If you take your neighbor's garment as security for a loan, till the sunset, you shall return it to him. Rashi is an interesting law. No expression of Kabbalah means security given at the time of the loan, but in which was exacted from the debtor when the debtor became due. We're talking about a guy gave a guy $100 a loan for a month. Now, at the end of the month, he says, I want my loan back. The guy says, I don't have the money. He says, okay. It's a poor man. He has no money. Give me your garment. I'm taking now the garment as collateral. That's what the Torah is talking about. This is all in Baba Metzia. The Torah repeats taking the security, implying that one may take security even many times. The whole best of it, he said, how much you owe me, yet your soul ascends to me every night, gives me an account, is found guilty before me, and I return it to you. You too take and return, take and return. And that's the law. The law is you can take security, but give it back. If the guy needs the garment, if it's a day garment, make sure he has it by the day. If it's a night garment, give it back to him. I do the exact same thing. I give you a loan. You give me back to me my neshama. I give you a neshama. You give it back to me. And I give it back to you. Ad ba Shemesh. Rashi says, until the sunset you shall return to him. For the entire day you shall return to him until the sun sets. And when the sun sets, you may again take it from him until the next morning. The verses talk about a garment worn by day, which is not needed at night. So you go back to him, you give it back to him in the morning so he can go out to work. And then come at night, take the garment back from him. But you have to give it back to him. If this is his garment, he could switch to the next verse. This is his only garment. Levade, this is his only garment. So this is his garment of what he wears. But my yishka, what will he wear? If he cries out to me, he'll say, "Hey, I don't know. I took a loan, and I need to give this as collateral, but I don't have no garments now." Shamti, and I will listen. You might not be listening to the pain of somebody else, but I will. Because I have graciousness, I have rachmanis. This is a cloak. This is a shirt. This includes even the spreads of his bed. So you have to be careful that when you do take collateral for your loan, you make sure that if the person needs that collateral for whatever reason, during the day or during the night, you need to give him back his collateral and go, and after you use it, go and take it back. This completes the Chumash of today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. The Rebbe continues chapter 23 of Tanya, and he continues to explain the power of learning Torah, that the greatest unity, since the whole concept of a Yid, Avodah, Yid service in the world is to bring unity in the world, unity between factions, unity between God and him, all unities, and the greatest unity that he can do is through learning Torah. So the Alter Rebbe says continues, from this explanation, what I said before, explanation of the lofty stature of the learning Torah, Talmud Torah connected, because no greater unity of wisdom with wisdom. The wise man, not only will it bring about a great love of God, this unity, It'll bring above a great fear and awe of God. One who truly engages in the learning Torah. When a person will think when he learns Torah, he'll consider how his soul and his garments of thought and speech that are found in his brain and his mouth that are fused in perfect unity with divine will and with the infinite light of the Ein Sof that is manifest in this learning, in the soul and the garments when he studies Torah. Which the truth is, this infinite light that when he learns Torah is manifest in one's Torah study is of such a lofty level if he realizes and understands it, that by him learning Torah, he connects to God in the ultimate levels of godliness, the essence of God, the will of God, the wisdom of God. That all the worlds, that all the upper and lower worlds are truly as naught in comparison with it, and are in fact an absolute nothing at all. So much so that they can only bear to have a minute glow of it clothed in them without them reverting to nothingness at all. So all the worlds can only receive a glimmer of light of God. Because they shouldn't become nothing, the upper worlds. But here, a Jew learning Torah connects to the essence of God. So that all the upper worlds and even the angels and all whatever godliness in the upper worlds can only receive a glimmer of godliness. But a Jew who learns Torah in this world touches the Eibishter himself. So when you consider that the same divine light that was completely beyond the capacity of all worlds manifests itself openly in his Torah study, the thinking of man will naturally experience a sense of awe. Now you'll understand the greatness of learning Torah, and you'll express an awe. Wow, look at that's truly a wonder. That all the worlds, all the malachim, all the spiritual entities don't receive, are not connected to God like I am connected to God by learning Torah. With Neshek, and that's why the verse says, God commanded us to fulfill all these statutes. Why? Liyira, to bring fear of God. What does that mean? Awe of God. According to this verse, observing mitzvahs would appear to be the first step that lead us to fear God. Logically, however, the performance of God's commandment would seem to be a result of one's fear of him, and not vice versa. The Alter Rebbe therefore explains that the above verse speaks of a higher level of awe than which is prerequisite for performing the commandment. The Alter Rebbe says, I'm not talking about the lower level. As we learned, Chassidus, there are two levels of fear. There's a lower level of fear and there's a higher level of fear. The lower level of fear is I'm afraid of retribution. The higher level of fear is that I have awe of God. Sarah will get to your question in a moment. So you have the awe of God. So now if commandments lead to the higher level of fear of God, surely the Torah study leads one to a higher level of fear. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for a lower level of fear, which we need to start our journey. We are looking for a higher level of fear, which is the awe of God. Regarding this higher level of fear, Amru, they said, Im ein chachma ein yira. So it's an interesting expression in the Mishnah. It says, Im ein yira ein chachma. Im ein chachma ein yira. If there's no fear, there's no wisdom. If there's no wisdom, there's no fear. How do you explain this Mishnah? What comes first? The answer is, if there's no lower level of wisdom, like you teach a child, he has to be taught. The immature person needs to have a lower level of fear to learn. But ultimately, through learning, im ein chachma, through great learning and understanding, ein yida, you come to really a higher level of fear, which is the concept of awe. So in this concept, wisdom represents Torah study, and fear, the higher level of fear, of awe of God, which can be reached only through Torah, through knowledge. By contrast, a statement, if there's no fear, there's no wisdom, refers to the lower level of fear, which is a prerequisite for the Torah study, as stated above. So in relationship to this level of fear, the Torah is called a gateway to the courtyard, meaning the sole means of entering the courtyard, visit the higher level of fear, is as explained elsewhere. Not every mind, however, can sustain such a fear, such an awe. And that's why therefore, yet even he whose mind cannot bear such a fear, an awe of God, maybe the person will never feel that. Because of the lower level of his soul, the sharshim, in the way it comes from above. His soul came from such a low level of the world of action that he's not capable of feeling awe of God. But nevertheless, this, even though I don't attain a level of awe, which I should attain, it shouldn't still create the concept of me not doing action. That's the first level of fear. Then you have to go to the first level of fear. If there's no fear, there's no wisdom. So I must go to the lower level of fear. But we should all try to ultimately reach the higher level of fear, as I'm going to explain later. And that completes Tanya of today. Today is the 23rd day of the month, and the Tillim of the day is from chapter 108 until chapter 112. So 108 to 112, and you would do the chitas of the day. Have a wonderful and beautiful day. And Mirchem, with the help of God, I'll see you all tomorrow at 8 a.m. and we'll continue to learn the chitas of the day. Have a wonderful day.